All right, so here we go. We're going to go to questions.
Well, actually, this isn't a question. It was more of an aha, and I wanted to share it with everybody.
Oh, wonderful.
I assume in one form or another, everyone shares this fear, and the fear that I experienced was, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get this. And I just thought that I'm going, okay, awareness is going, oh, look, there's a fear that I have. And it's not a shaking fear, but it's a story I've made up.
Thank you for saying that. Not only is it a story that you made up, but if you believe that thought, you're not going to get it, you're using mind incorrectly, because the mind that you're using is the mind that already got it. Because you're using the mind that knows everything, but it's only that thought, I'm not going to get it. Do you see how simple that is? Because that is a block to the presence of truth that is already in you. Our ego doesn't want us to know truth. So it creates these stories so that we will look outside of ourselves. I'm not going to get this. But it's in you. Thank you for sharing that. That's so wonderful. So I'm going to share a couple of more things to put here about what reality is. And then so that will complete the list, and then we can get into more questions and answers. So if you think about life, well, I already said that it's in a circle. When you think about something that is in a circle, inherently in what it is, it just goes around, same thing, it's changeless. And we'll definitely, if you can't see it here, we'll let everybody get a picture of it before you go. In being changeless, that means there is equality. It's the same thing. There's only one energy. It's everything that is contained within it, because it is whole, because it is one. It is changeless, and it is equal. So when you think about something that is powerful, like the mind of God is, and it is always creating, because it is infinite, inside of that ability to be changeless, to be equal, it is the energy that creates everything. So it is creative. Maybe my last thing that I'll add here. Well, let me add a few more. Because it is infinite, the only answer that it can have to everything that it is equal with, to everything that it is love, is yes. The universe only says yes. That is it. So whether you are aware of it or not, everything that you think about, you bring about, because the universe doesn't, God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it. See, I'm interchanging the words to give you permission to do the same thing. When you begin to understand that whatever you think about, you bring about, this is when we have to begin to take responsibility, because we have a creative power. And the Course, one of the beautiful things about the Course, it is saying that what we're doing is that we are using the wrong mind. In other words, we're making wrong use of the mind. The mind of God, which creates anything and says yes, it's infinitely creative. We are using it incorrectly, and we are then creating, now the Course says, we're not creating anything, we're making things. So to understand what that means is to understand the rest of this. So we live inside of a line, birth and death. So when we think that way, we are linear. If this, then that. When you begin to think about God, you cannot think linearly, because we want to know, well, when did God start? When does God end? Well, God is infinite. Our human mind cannot grasp infinity. Try as you may, we can't go that far out. We could if we didn't say we can't, which, the same thing with the fears, but we've got to get our mind trained to understand that when we think in a circle, we're beginning to think multidimensionally. This is, what that means is that because we have taken, and we've broken up our existence into time, so there's birth and death and it's temporal, we don't allow for things to operate in multiple levels at once. So when we know that what we are is infinite, we're always living in the now. But when we go to being finite and to be temporal, we are always living in the past and the future. Those are the only two places we can go. And the Course is really very clear that when you're thinking with your ego, you're always thinking from the past. The reason you think from the past, guess what that is all about? When you're operating, dealing with a situation right now, and you are perceiving whatever is happening here, because we operate from fear in the ego and it is self-protection, guess where we go to find out how to deal with the situation? We drop right down to the third chakra, and we go to the beliefs that we held as little children, and we're operating with those pent-up emotions. So we literally regress down to being like a kid having a tantrum. Have you noticed some politicians that you would say they're behaving like a 2-year-old, yes, like an 8-year-old? That was like the behavior of a 14-year-old. Well, it's because they have regressed to a primitive state of survival, which means I've got to prove myself right. I don't care what I'm saying, even if what I'm saying is wrong, but if I'm believing it is right, it's because I'm operating from that self-protective, immature aspect of ourselves. So it's so important that we understand that. So we only see the past because the ego is all about fear. When you are in fear, there's no trust. There's no ability to access the higher mind. It's impossible because we shut down. We crawl into our little hole, and inside of our little hole, we feel all separate. We're in protection mode. In protection mode, there's duality. There's another that can hurt me and attack me, so I need to protect myself. It's all about me. Remember, this is all about me. So what's the opposite to changeless? What is changeless is then things that change. And when we don't see everybody's equality, when we don't see everyone as equal, all that we can do is look at things as unequal. And this is what the Course calls specialness. So now some people are special, some are not.
Okay.
So the ego creates special love. You're special and I'll love you, but you got to meet my conditions. Because the minute you don't meet my conditions, you become special hate. Yes, right. You know, that's the only place that we operate. And if you think about it, the love of the human mind, of the ego mind, is all about self-protection. So I am only going to give you what ensures that I get what I need. And again, that is a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old immature child that did not learn how to develop trust in itself. So it needs to control the outer world. Now, the one that I want to show you now is, I know that you'll get it. This is so simple, but I know that you will get it. I hope that it makes a really big impression. So when we are operating from God's mind, God in its infinite wisdom and its infinite nature, it is infinite possibilities, anything goes, it is creative. That means that everything that God creates is always fresh and new. God does not repeat itself. That's why we don't have same thumbprints. There is no need to repeat itself. Studies that have been done of snowflakes, and they can't find 2 snowflakes that look alike. You know how many gazillion, trillions, quadrillions of snowflakes fall? You know where your family's from. And they're not alike? How can that be? Well, it's an infinite well. Infinite well. So what does the ego do when it operates from the past? It can only do one thing. Copies. But it's not just a copy. It's like a Xerox copy. You know how when you run an original through the Xerox machine, and then you take the copy and you run it through the Xerox, and you take the copy of the copy, eventually you barely see what's there? So the ego has taken what is so beautiful and infinite, and has been making copies and copies and copies of the same thing. That's why we regurgitate the same thing that we said when we were 3 years old. The same things come out of our mouth. We see things the same way. This is why Einstein, that brilliant mind who gave us that formula, said you can't solve a problem with the same mind that creates it, because the mind, when we're using our ego to, when we're making use of God's mind through our ego, which is our beliefs, the best that we can do is regurgitate. Because there's nothing fresh, nothing new. When we close up and believe that we're inside of a little hole, all we can do is see the walls that are around us, and that's all that we see. So therefore, that's all that we keep repeating. Listen to yourself when you're trying to problem solve. You're going to be thinking the same thing. You're going to be doing the same thing, repeating the same issue. Yeah, I'll fix this, and you do the same thing. Yeah, I won't have another relationship like that one. Oh, I'm in another relationship like that one. I won't let a boss treat me the same way. Oh, this boss is treating me the same way. Why? Because you're only going to be able to operate at the level that you believe is who you are. And because the ego mind is determined on being right, we're always defending only what we know. And once you know something, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why we operate inside of that little hole. We operate inside of a very tiny idea of possibilities, and we keep repeating. We keep making Xerox copies of the same thing, hoping to get a different result.
When you know that you know, but you still get caught up in that, you know it, but you're still getting caught up in it.
When we know better and we don't do better, it's because it's at the level of the head and it hasn't dropped at the level of the heart. Until we move it to the heart, we don't trust it. We just don't trust it. It's like the woman who I believe I mentioned with you last time. The woman who took the dictation for the Course in Miracles, when somebody asked her about it, like, are you using this? Are you practicing? She says, well, I know it's true, but I don't believe it. So she knows it. She received it. She trusts that it came from Jesus. She had no doubt that it came from Jesus. She just couldn't believe for herself that she could apply it, because the information was so different than her conditioning. And you have to think about it this way. She receives this information, but your average course student takes decades to put it into practice and really use it and to have that transformation. Well, she received it, but she resisted for a while putting it into practice. That's why, you can have the truth and not use it. It's useless. So what is happening, if you know it in your mind, you are somewhere still on the bridge. Because that's the space of the head. We're training our head. We're training our mind. And that's the space of the heart. This is where the Course in Miracles becomes really practical. We have to understand that once you know truth, you have to apply it. So the Course teaches that the thing that is going to save us is forgiveness. And the thing about forgiveness is what moves us on the bridge. So the Course is a course in miracles. A miracle is a shift in perception. A shift in perception is I'm going to perceive things instead of from my ego, I'm going to perceive it with God. Instead of from fear, I'm going to perceive it with love. Instead of from being right, I'm going to perceive it from an aspect that allows me to get comfortable with that there's more than I know. That requires a lot of humbleness. That requires a willingness to not think of yourself as being wrong as a bad thing, but rather you were incorrect. So the Course is very clear. Not one of us is sinners as we were taught that we were through religious teachings. Sin is a mistake. We made a mistake. The people who taught us who we are were mistaken about who we are. They thought we were bodies and humans. They counted our toes and our fingers. They did not know that they had each received a bundle of beautiful energy. Can you imagine if our parents or we treated our little ones like, oh my gosh, look at my bundle of energy. I can't wait to send a picture of my child's aura instead of a picture of its body. If we looked at a baby and we beheld the energy of God right there, we would treat it very differently. We would literally be practicing namaste. Source in me sees source in you. The divine in me sees the divine in you. But because we're seeing bodies, when we are not aware of that and we're seeing bodies, all we want is that body to shut up, go to sleep, get up, get your books, do your homework, do this, do that. So we are caught up in that we are just bodies, which is why it takes a while for us to shift our perception. Listen, I've got lots of friends who are energy healers, lots of friends. And we all know that we're energy, but we keep talking about our body and our pains and our things like they're real because we're not going to the use of the mind with God. We're using our mind, misusing our mind with the ego. And here's something that I want to talk about. The Course is not attempting to have us immediately go, oh yeah, I'm not a body, I'm just energy. It knows that it's taking us time. The Course is really clear. This has taken thousands of years of lifetimes and lifetimes to create this illusion that what we are is separate. But the Course is very clear. That's why you cannot write the curriculum. You've got to practice it until we get to the place that we are so well trained to say, God, what would you have me do with this illness? What is this illness telling me? Because when we understand that everything that is energy, in its state of pure perfection, it's energy in motion. Right here, see? Right here, this is God right there in front of me. All this space, that's pure perfect energy. Each one of us is a clump of energy that it has been accompanied by a lot of thinking over many, many lifetimes, and it's carrying the density of the fears that we have experienced lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So we may be having an illness in this lifetime, that is lifetimes ago. So Jesus in the Course is not expecting us to say, oh, I'm just energy, this illness, go away illness. It's not going to go away by you saying go away, because if you don't believe it, it can't. We have been conditioned to believe that illnesses are generational, that it comes down in our genes. Do you know how hard it is for people to stop thinking that? If that's what you've been taught, this runs in my family. Right. Well, if you study Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, anybody here has ever studied Bruce Lipton? Biology of belief. Here's a biologist, here's a scientist that will tell you if you study what Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches. Your mind is what directs your cells. We have the ability to heal ourselves, but not if we don't believe it. So if you believe that your energy, if 10% of you believes it and 90% doesn't, well, you might be able to cure a cold. You might make that go away. But if you only have 10% belief, you're not going to get rid of the cancer. That requires a lot more than 10% belief.